All right, so I would like to introduce everyone to Stone Cook at NAMI, which stands for the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And he is here to talk about ending the silence. Thanks
Mhm.
for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, it's great to be here with you all. I hope everybody is doing okay. It is very gloomy outside right now, so I'm not a fan of this type of weather. I don't know if anybody else can sort of agree with that, but I had to do quite a bit this morning to prepare myself for a day of rain and nasty clouds. But it's great to be here with you all. I really appreciate Amanda inviting us to just talk to you all about mental health. So with this presentation, I'm going to cover just sort of the basics around mental health, right? What we can notice, what we can notice in ourselves or someone we know who may be living with a mental health condition or just struggling with the mental health in general. I'm going to talk about just some of my own personal experiences as well with that. And I'm also going to be just covering, mental health conditions. Just briefly, I'm going to be talking about warning signs that somebody may be thinking about suicide as well, and what we can do when we notice those warning signs. So that's essentially what this presentation is going to be about. Um, if at any point in this conversation you all have any type of, you want to have a question, definitely put it in the chat. You can also raise your hand or just come off of mute and just talk to me and say, hey, I have a question. I want some more clarification on this. I'm going to ask you all some questions as well. So definitely feel free to utilize the chat, come off of mute, whatever you feel is necessary to sort of engage with me in this presentation. But ultimately, this is not just me sitting here talking to you all about mental health, but it's us having a conversation just about what this kind of looks like and how we can help ourselves, how we can help others. Um, so yeah, that is what we're gonna do. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for me before we get started? All right. So, like Amanda said, you see, I put in a chat the survey. So we give these presentations for free all over St. Louis. So there's no cost to um, any of the participants who are involved in our presentations. They're all free. And one way that we make them free is we get a lot of grants. We're grant funded, and those grants require us to report just what we've been presenting on, make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing. And so these surveys, when people fill these surveys out, that's really helpful for us to get the funding that we need. So if you all could just make sure that you do fill out that survey for us, is going to be very helpful. All right. So I'll get started. Um, simply by just asking you all about mental health, right? Just a couple of questions just to see where we are at with this topic of mental health. Okay. So some basic questions and feel free to just go ahead and type in the chat, right? Um, so mental health, where in our body do you all feel mental health lives? Where in our body do you all feel mental health lives? Everywhere. Thank you so much. Where else? Body, mind, spirit. Thank you so much. Any other inputs in our minds? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, take another one. Ultimately, it does live in our minds, right? Yes, our mind, our brain. That's where mental health lives, right? Do you all think everyone has mental health? You can type in yes, no, Y, or N. You can also come off of mute if you want to. But does anyone here believe that everyone has mental health? Yes. Yeah. hmm So the answer is yes, right? Yes, absolutely. We all have, thank you. Thank you. Yes. If we have a brain, absolutely. Right. We all have mental health, right? Just like we all have physical health. And our mental health can be in a great place, or in a not so great place, right? And the way that we know that is three key things. There's three main things just that we all sort of have that can help us to know whether our mental health is in a great place or a not so great place. Would anybody be able to tell me what those three things are? What are those three things that you all think are key in helping us to know whether our mental health is in a great place or a not so great place? It's three main things. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Byron. Yes. So our thoughts, our actions, and our feelings. Absolutely, right? Those three things help us to know whether our mental health is in a good place or not. And this video is going to talk more about just what that looks like. All right. I'm going to play this video. If you all cannot hear it, please let me know. I believe I shared my sound, so it should be good.
So, what's mental health? Well, first of all, we all have it. You probably know someone who's living with depression, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder.
OCD or bipolar 1 or 2.
Regardless of whether or not you live with a mental health condition, we all have mental health. And so it is so imperative that we start prioritizing our mental health just as much as we do our physical health.
It can be on a spectrum. You can be in a really good position with your mental health or in a struggling position with your mental health. Either way, we all have it and it's totally normal.
Taking care of our mental health ensures that we are able to live productive and happy lives.
So, like that video said, right, a person's mental health can be in a great place or not so great place, right? It can fluctuate. It could be on a spectrum, really, right? So we can have some good days, we have some really bad days, we can have some decent days, but we know it could go bad at any time. Um, but yeah, our essentially our mental health can be in a great place or not. And we know how our mental health is by our thoughts, our actions, and our feelings, right? And so when our mental health is in a great place, can anybody tell me what they think that means? And if you want to come off of mute for this one, because it might take a little bit for you to type it, but what does that mean for our mental health to be in a great place? Can anybody share what they think that means? What think that feels like? Does it mean for our mental health to be in a great place? When you are happy and not stressed about anything, okay, right? Meaning you're feeling happy and good about yourself and at that moment, very happy and productive life, relaxed. Okay, I appreciate those answers. Thank you so much, right? And so, um, all of those things that you all type go into it, right? Having self-control, I really appreciate that answer, right? So that all goes into a person's mental health being in a great place. And ultimately, right, it's about not necessarily always being happy or never experiencing sadness or anything like that. When you know everything is going to be all right, that's a part of it as well, right? It's when we notice, when we can experience those feelings or those situations that cause anger, sadness, frustration. We're all going to experience that stress, right? If there's anyone in here who has never experienced anger or stress, that is awesome. But I'd imagine everybody has experienced some level of anger, stress, fear, frustration, boredom, whatever it may be. Um, and when our mental health is in a great place, it doesn't mean that we won't experience that, but it just means that we're able to deal with those situations and those experiences in healthy ways, in ways that do not hurt ourselves or other people around us, and whatever that hurt might look like, right? And so if our mental health is in a not so great place, we can experience that anger, frustration, sadness, whatever it may be, a lot more often, and it may be a lot more intense than we would feel it if if our mental health was in a great place, right? And it can make it really hard for us to deal with situations that come up. And so this could be a warning sign that we either are living with a mental health condition or may develop a mental health condition at some point in our lives, right? If our mental health is in a not so great place, right? So mental health conditions, what these are medical conditions, just like physical health ones. These are things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, some of those things that we heard in that video. Has anyone ever heard of some of these mental health conditions? What are some specific mental health conditions that you all have heard of, or you may have had experiences with yourself, or you know someone has experience with? What are some specific mental health conditions you all can name, can think of?
Um, Hi, my name is Aria, and
Hi.
I know someone that's very close to me. It's not listed on the slide, but
Mhm.
I heard of schizophrenia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I see Byron, you put bipolar, anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. Yep, all of those very common. Some of the most common mental health conditions that people experience. Absolutely. Right. Um, Anxiety, depression, ADHD, absolutely. Right. Bipolar and depression for sure. Right. Um, so those are all like very common mental health conditions that people experience, right? And these are medical conditions, right? OCD, right? Another one. And so these are medical conditions, and we can understand these as medical conditions because they do affect the way that we think, feel, and act. A lot of the mental health conditions that we experience have to do with our brain chemistry sometimes. Sometimes it's things that we can't even control, or sometimes it's due to maybe substances or different things in the air, or even genetics can cause someone to have a mental health condition, right? Um, so it's a lot of different factors that go into a person living with a mental health condition, right? I do want to talk about just like some specific ones like depression, right? Depression is one of those very common mental health conditions that a lot of people struggle with. And ultimately, depression itself is a uh umbrella term for a specific type of emotion, right? A lot of people can feel depressed, but may not live with the mental health condition of a major depressive disorder, right? So I can be depressed, a little bit because I may have not been doing really good in my schoolwork and I'm feeling really down. I'm feeling sad about it. I'm feeling unmotivated, all of these different things. Doesn't necessarily mean that I am living with a mental health condition, but maybe it just means I'm struggling with dealing with some of the stresses in life, right? Um, and so a person can become depressed in those moments, but it becomes a disorder when those feelings last for a very long time, when they become extremely intense, or when that depression is applied to something that is a lot smaller than what that depression may call for. So it could be a lot of different things. And when we look at mental health conditions and what they are, and if we're struggling with those, we need to really look at the bigger warning signs instead of just, oh, that person's sad, they must be depressed. It's much bigger than that. Um, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, Byron, thank you so much for saying that. Right. Your mom had it after she had your brother, and I think that's a common one as well. We call that postpartum depression. A lot of women deal with that right after they have a child. I know my wife struggled with that, and she struggled with it for about 2 years after she had our second child. So these are very common mental health conditions. Like I said, they affect the way that we think, feel, and act, but they are common and they are treatable. And there's a lot of different ways that a person may treat that mental health condition. And we'll talk about those things later on in our presentation. But they're nobody's fault, right? So they're never that person's fault if they are living with a mental health condition. That is a common thing that people think is that if somebody is living with a major depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder or PTSD or ADHD or all of these different things, that it is their fault that they're living with that. It's their fault that they're struggling. Um, and that is a very common misconception about mental health conditions. The reality is it is not that person's fault, right? It is not, right? Um, and uh, Carolyn, are you asking me that question or are you just stating it? Are you asking if like why a person can't control their mental health condition or okay, yeah, for sure, for sure. Right. And it's very hard for a person to like one, acknowledge some of the struggles that they're going through, but also control how it comes on, if it comes on, things like that. So it's never that person's fault. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a number of different ways that a person develops a mental health condition. It could be their environment that they live in, it could be they it could be their, you know, genetics, their upbringing. It could be, a lot of people who have family members who live with mental health conditions that can be passed down. It could be a person's brain chemistry, right? A lot of things, a lot of mental health conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar have to deal with a person's brain chemistry and things like that. So it's not that person's fault. It's also nothing to be ashamed of. I am someone who lives with a major depressive disorder and an anxiety disorder. And so with that, that's something that I live with. And that's something that I have to deal with every single day. It's something that I have to work through every single day, but I'm not ashamed of it. And it doesn't stop me from achieving my goals. That's another misconception that people may have about living with a mental health condition is that it stops them from achieving their goals. And reality is that is something that we can control ourselves, is how it affects just our life going forward. We can do things that can help us succeed even while living with the mental health conditions that we live with. I've always had the goal to be a husband, to be a father, and to give presentations, and I am doing that. I have the goal of being a therapist one day. Things that I can do while living with the mental health condition that I have, right? Byron, thank you. I take that as a compliment that I look like Kanye West a little bit. I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, for sure, right? You said, your mom said trauma can make or can create mental illnesses. Yes, absolutely. Trauma is a big thing with a lot of the mental health conditions that we live with. Trauma can 100% cause a lot of the mental health conditions that we speak about. Depression, anxiety, PTSD is definitely a trauma-based mental health condition. So, thank you so much for that input, right? So we're moving on, right? So when we notice these warning signs, it's important that we speak up, right? So the reality is when we look at the numbers, 1 in 6, um, young adults, young people between the 15-year-old and 25-year-old age range, about 1 in 6 of them will live with a mental health condition at some point in their lives, but only 50% of that group is actually going to get help for that mental health condition. The other 50% are not going to speak up, right? So half of that group is not going to speak up about struggling with that mental health condition. Can anybody tell me why? What are some reasons you all can think of why somebody would not want to speak up about struggling with their mental health? What are some of those reasons? Shame, thank you. Yes, right, absolutely. Feeling ashamed, for sure. What else? Embarrassing. Yeah, you feel very embarrassed, right? Feeling like something is wrong with them, right? For sure. Thank you all so much for those answers, right? And there's a lot of different things, right? So it is people feeling like they're wrong, people feeling like it's an embarrassing thing, it's something to be ashamed of. Not even knowing how to talk about it. That's another one. Thank you, Amanda, right? So not even knowing how to talk, like what words should I even use to express what I'm feeling? And some people don't even know that they are struggling, right? Um, yeah, they think that it's a normal thing that they are going through, right? Some of the things that they're doing, or some of the things that they're saying, or some of the ways that they're thinking. They may feel like it's just completely normal and it's okay. And I don't like to use that term normal because it's not, nothing in our world is really normal. We're all very unique. And so, but I would more or less say, we may think that our actions, our thoughts, our feelings are healthy for ourselves, are healthy to another person, and they actually may be harming us or harming another person. And so sometimes we don't even realize that what we're going through is actually hurting our health in some way. So there's a lot of reasons that a person doesn't speak up, right? Um, some people don't want to take medication. They think that they should, or being labeled for sure. So that all goes into this thing called stigma. Has anyone ever heard of the word stigma before today? You just put yes or no in the chat. I assume we all have. Maybe some people haven't. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. Right. Yeah. And I know I've gone into schools and I do this presentation and a lot. And you know, some people think I'm saying astigmatism, which is for your eyes, and that's not at all what I'm saying. But this video is going to talk about what stigma is a great video, and is very helpful to understand more about what stigma is.
Unfortunately, there is a lot of stigma surrounding mental health. Stigma is a negative association to something. One of the best ways that we can get rid of it is by having open and honest conversations surrounding mental health.
It's important that we realize that we have the power to decrease and end the stigma. This will allow for us to feel safer and to feel better about reaching out for help and actually feeling heard and seen and knowing that we're not alone.
So stigma, right? It's those negative things that a person may say about a person may think or say or feel, like just those negative thoughts and ideas that a person has about something. And there's a lot of stigma out in this world right now. A lot of people have negative ideas and thoughts about mental health, about people who live with a mental health condition, people who struggle with their mental health, just about the conversation of mental health in general. I'm sure you've all heard the word crazy floating around, insane, weird, all of these different things, or even oversensitive or attention seeking or different things like that. We want to get rid of that stigma, right? Because when we have those labels in our minds and in our hearts, and we have these ideas of the topic of mental health, um, it can definitely create moments of bullying. It can create moments of discrimination and all of these different things that we've had in our world. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we are connecting with the person, right? The person first. So even if that person does have a mental health condition, we want to be able to zoom out and just to see that person, right? Not necessarily zoom out. I mean, zoom in and see more of that person, more than just, oh, that person lives with a depressive disorder. But also they're actually really good at bowling and they like bowling, and they're also really good at video games and they really like playing video games, or they're also a really good husband and father, or this person is a really good mother, or this person is a really good friend, or this person, like more than just that person has depression or anxiety. And so we want to make sure that we are getting rid of that stigma and seeing the whole person is super important, right? This screen talks about just ways that we can speak about the topic of mental health that could be helpful versus unhelpful. Okay. So now we're going to talk about warning signs. All right. So as we jump into these warning signs, there's two different slides where we're going to talk about just specific warning signs that a person could be going through that could indicate that they are living with symptoms of a mental health condition, not necessarily the mental health condition themselves. There may need to be more work to figure out if a person should be diagnosed with a mental health condition. But these are just some of the beginning early warning signs that we can look at to see if we are struggling, if we do need to reach out for that help, if we do need to reach out for maybe a diagnosis or something like that, right? So the very first one, feeling very sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. So this is a common warning sign of symptoms of depression or major depressive disorder. So feeling very sad or withdrawn for longer than 2 weeks, right? So sadness, nothing wrong with sadness, right? Anyone here, anyone ever been sad before? Anyone? You can say yes or no. Anyone ever been sad before? Because I hope it's not just me. I've been sad plenty of times in my life, right? Of course. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad it's not just me, right? So we all felt sadness before, and I'm sure we can all think of things in our minds that have made us sad. It could be something big, like a death in the family, or it could be something um simple, like just being disappointed with the dinner that we had, right? I got sad the other day because I tried to make cookies and they came out burnt, and I was very disappointed, right? And so just being disappointed is a part of that, can be a part of that sadness. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it can last for a very long time. So maybe I burned those cookies and I'm really upset and sad about that for the next week, right? So that is where we kind of want to make sure we can look at that and say, okay, yeah, for sure, being disappointed that the cookies are burnt, that's normal. But being disappointed about that situation for a long period of time, that is one of those things where we want to, that may indicate it may not be very healthy right now. So feeling sad, it can also cause us to be withdrawn from a lot of different things. It cause us to withdraw from family members, from friends, from, our even our work, even the things that we really love doing, right? Oftentimes, this people who get burnt out can experience this warning sign as well. So it can last for weeks, it can last for months, it can last a very long time. Severe out of control and risk-taking behavior that can cause harm to others or ourselves. So these are things that we can do. It also often, correlates with our intrusive thoughts. We all have intrusive thoughts, things that, we feel like doing, but we don't do because we know it could be wrong. Well, sometimes a person can struggle to control those impulses, those urges, those intrusive thoughts of theirs, and they kind of just do those things anyway. They don't really have a regard for if it's healthy, if it's safe or anything like that, but they just act. Um, so that's one of those warning signs. Sudden overwhelming fear for no reason that could, manifest itself into a person's heart racing really fast, physical discomfort, fast breathing. These are some of those fear responses that a person may have. That's normal in those scary situations. And I don't like the word normal, but that is, that makes sense in certain situations, but may not make as much sense in others, right? So does anyone have fears or things that you're scared of? Anybody want to share some of those things that are are scary, or even things that you get worried about sometimes? Anybody have any of those things? Or some of those fears, those worries that you all have? And if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay too, right? Absolutely, losing loved ones. Yeah, for sure. Right? That's very, one of those things that we're all scared of. Scared of the dark, absolutely, right? Bugs and rodents, for sure. Absolutely. Right. Yep. Bad weather, for sure. right? I'm not one for tornadoes, right? Not necessarily scary, but afterlife, right? It's all right, it's the unknown. Absolutely, right? It's the fear of the unknown. So this is all normal, all very common, right? And we all deal with that. You all are, I know a lot of people in your organization are job seekers, and I think there could be a lot of stress and discomfort and fear of going into, you know, a new job or just a new period in our lives, right? Every single time I changed schools, I was scared. I went to about 10 different schools from the time I was in kindergarten all the way through high school, and I was terrified in every school, right? So these are normal fears, normal things that we can have. Um, and sometimes those fears may come up in moments that specific thing is not present, right? So a person may be afraid of the dark and they may start to have all of those fear symptoms as if it was dark in the room, as if it was just, or if the room was getting smaller, right? Somebody just afraid of tight spaces and they feel like the room is getting smaller, but it's actually not, right? Um, so there's a lot of those different things that can make a person very scared. I know this morning as I was driving into work, I started to have a lot of anxiety. I was listening to a podcast about they were talking about death, and I started to have a lot of anxiety myself about death, for myself, but also for a family member. I had to do some like breathing exercises to get through it, right? So these are some of those things that can come. So this is common. This warning sign, sudden overwhelming fear for no reason. This is a symptom of a panic attack. Has anybody heard of a panic attack? Is pretty common. A lot of people have had panic attacks before. Does anyone know someone who's ever been through a panic attack or, experienced one themselves? Is extremely dramatic, right? Um, yes, I had one before because of a spider. Yeah, absolutely. There you go, right? So there's a lot of different things that can cause that, right? I've had a panic attack before, right? I know some people who've had it, and it is an exhausting experience for that person. Um, and the crash from that can be dramatic. It has put people in hospitals before, right? And it can cause a lot of physical concerns as well, right? When a person starts to experience that. So there's a lot of different things. But this is a part of the anxiety disorder, right? So anxiety disorders, there's a number of different ones, and anxiety itself is an emotion. We all have anxiety. Has anyone seen Inside Out 2 yet? I don't want to ruin it for anybody if you haven't seen it. But if you guys have, yes, great movie. It's an amazing movie, right? I loved it. And don't tell anybody, but I definitely cried a little bit at the movie. Don't tell anybody though. Don't tell anybody I said that. But I love the movie. It is a great movie, right? Um, thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Um, but I saw that movie, and in that movie, they have a new character who is anxiety, and they show her as an emotion, and ultimately, anxiety is an emotion, and it can be a healthy emotion, but it can become unhealthy when we apply that anxiety to different parts of our lives, or we allow it to take over in situations that it probably shouldn't. And so there's a lot of different parts to anxiety, but it ultimately is an emotion and it becomes a disorder when it just gets out of hand, or anything like that. And so it can become a generalized anxiety disorder. It can become PTSD, or it can become a phobia. It can become all of these different things. It can become OCD. That is a part of the anxiety umbrella, right? OCD is an anxiety disorder. So these are all of those different things. So I spend a lot of time on that warning sign, but I feel like, it's an extremely common one that a person may experience. Seeing, hearing, or believing things that aren't real. A lot of people see, hear, or believe things that others may not see, hear, or believe, right? So the seeing and the hearing could be, maybe a hallucination, right? The believing things, that's where we get to the delusions and things like that. So maybe a person may believe that they're not smart, but all the signs show that they are very smart, but the belief is I'm not smart, right? And so that could be insecurity, that could be a whole bunch of different things that they may be going through. A person may believe, certain things about just like their environment or the people around them that they may not have checked in on, or they have no plans on checking in on, but they just have that belief and they allow that belief to inform their actions, their thoughts, even their words, right? A person's speech can be disorganized in these moments. Um, and a person can really struggle to deal with just life, just day to day. This is a common warning sign for schizophrenia. If anyone has ever known anybody who is schizophrenic or has schizophrenia, these are some of those warning signs that they may experience. Drastic changes in somebody's mood, behavior, personality, even sleeping habits. This is one of those warning signs that those early warning signs that a person is struggling with a variety of different things. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be PTSD, whatever it may be. But those drastic changes, right? So we all have a baseline, and it's important that we know that baseline. And when we fluctuate either above or below too far, we can see that as a warning sign that, maybe we are struggling with something, and we may need to ask somebody for help, right? Um, the next one, extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still, that puts somebody in danger, causes failure in something, whether it's school or work. So I struggle to concentrate. I don't know if anybody here struggles to focus or concentrate sometimes. I can't be just me, but I struggle to focus sometimes. Like I work in an office, and it's hard for me to pay attention to everything, especially when I'm on my computer all day. Sometimes I click over to YouTube when I should just be checking my email, right? But that's normal, right? We all struggle to focus sometimes, and that's okay. But it's when it becomes so extreme that we fail to get things done that we needed to get done, that affects our team, that affects our future, whether short term or long term, in an extreme way, right? That affects um, our families, whatever it may be, right? So that is one of those things where it just becomes so extreme that we can clearly see the danger or the failure in it. And it can also be uncontrollable as well if it's not taken care of. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. And then these last three bullet points that you all see: throwing up, using laxatives, using alcohol or drugs excessively, or trying to harm oneself, right? These are all negative ways that some people choose to cope with some of these earlier warning signs that we just talked about. Oftentimes these are some of the things that people feel are the best thing to help get that immediate change or fix. And it can cause a lot of problems in the long term, right? So we want to make sure that we can understand these. All right, so that is that. I'm going to show a quick video, and this is a person just expressing like when she noticed the warning signs in herself, and then what it took to actually get that help.
I was scared to talk to my friends and my family because I didn't know how they would react. I didn't want to push them in a corner of, oh, this is what you have to say, or make them think I was doing something for attention. So I didn't get help for a while, and I tried to manage my symptoms on my own, but my symptoms didn't go away. They fluctuated since then. I can remember the day where it hit me so hard that it felt just like a physical, like, ugh, I'm 14 and I feel like 60 at this point. Like the world is just weighing on me. and I just don't know what to do with it. I need to tell someone.
So talking to somebody about some of the things that we're struggling with can be extremely difficult, right? I don't know if anyone has ever had the opportunity to speak to somebody about some of the things that some of those experiences that cause anger or sadness or frustration or whatever. Um, but if you have, definitely let me know. Let me know if it was a good experience, if it was not a good experience. 10 out of 10 would recommend or not so much, right? It's a different experience for everybody. I know for me, depending on who um I speak to, it can be really good. Or it could not be so good, and I won't get the empathy that I'm looking for, or whatever it may be. And so it's important to make sure we find those people that we can trust with those emotions, with those feelings, right? And so figuring out who those people are, it could be someone, that we are friends with, it could be one of our elders, somebody that we know, right? A mom, dad, a parent, caregiver, somebody like that, or it can be a mentor, right? Having a mentor is super, super helpful, right? It's been helpful for me in my life, and I still talk to my mentor till this day. And making sure that we can send positive messages to one another. Sometimes I send my friends just a meme or a GIF or just a funny video that I read or saw, maybe a funny article or something like that. So just making sure that we are just connecting with one another. Sometimes, though, a person can feel very alone in the things that they are experiencing, and it can lead to a person feeling like they don't have anybody to talk to. And it can lead to thoughts of suicide. So talking, writing, drawing about death is one of those warning signs that a person may be thinking about suicide, talking about having no reason to live or being a burden to other people, talking about not being here tomorrow, looking for ways to attempt suicide, feeling hopeless, right? These are all serious warning signs. And speaking from experience, right? People who are contemplating suicide often feel like they just don't want to experience some of the things that they're experiencing, some of those warning signs, some of the thoughts that they may have, some of the anxiety or depression or anything like that. I know a couple of years back when I was experiencing some of these warning signs, that was the biggest thing. I just did not want to feel all of those things that I was feeling, right, at the time. And so that can definitely be one of those warning signs. So it's important that we are checking in with each other, with our friends and family members. So yeah, thank you so much, Byron, for sharing that, right? So even after a really difficult situation, right, a person can start to feel that hopelessness, the despair, or just feeling like there's no point in life and things like that. So these are very serious things, and we need to take these things serious as soon as we see these things and get immediate help, show immediate attention, right? And so we can reach out to that person if we truly feel like we're comfortable, we have a good relationship with that person, or we feel like we can have that conversation in a safe and appropriate way. We want to make sure that we reach out to that person. We want to make sure that we can reach out to any professionals that we know, anybody, um, anyone who we know that can help us understand what that person is going through, right? What we are going through as well. There's some numbers on the screen. 988 is a mental health emergency helpline. There's BHR, which is a suicide or crisis line here in St. Louis that people can reach out to. On our website, namistl.org, we have a number of different resources that a person can reach out to. There's so many resources that we can reach out to whenever we are noticing those warning signs and we need to get help immediately. And so it's super important that we do. It's super important that we don't panic, right? Because sometimes it can bring panic, and we want to make sure that we're just there for that person. We're available, we can be in their presence. We definitely don't want to make it seem bigger than it is. because it is big, but we want to make sure that we're calm. We present a calm presence for that person, um, because in that moment, their life is already not calm. It could be hectic, it could be chaotic, it could be a lot of different things. And so having a calm presence in their midst could be very helpful. So we want to make sure that we are doing that first. We're asking those questions, we're being open to them, and we're just able to listen, right? So with that being said, there's a lot of things that a person can do to help their mental health, right? This video is going to talk about some of those things.
It's really important to remember there are a lot of treatment options available. So if you try one and you might not really like it, it's not a bad thing to move on and try another one. One option is medication, which works differently for everyone. Medication may really help your friend, might not really help you. And the same goes for therapy. Some people really like one-on-one therapy. Other people really like group therapy. One-on-one therapy has been a huge part of my recovery, and it was actually a huge part of my life even before I was diagnosed. And it's always helped me to talk to someone who is not part of my day-to-day life and who can just help me straightforwardly and only talk about me.
So therapy, that's one of those things that can really help, right? Whether somebody is living with a mental health condition or not, therapy is a great way for us to understand more about the ways that we think, feel, act, right? I know for me, there's a lot of things that I do or say or feel just on a day-to-day, even think, that I don't realize is unhealthy until I talk to my therapist about that, and he's able to say, let's circle back to that. Let's actually unpack what you just said. And once we unpack it, there's a lot of deeper things that are going on. So has anyone here ever been through therapy or know someone who has been through therapy before, or heard of therapy? Um, yeah, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's a good experience for some, maybe not for others. And that's one thing that, it takes some time to find a good therapist that we actually can appreciate. There's a lot of different options for free or or even affordable therapy. I know all the therapists that I've went to all had a sliding scale, which is one of those things where they, based off of, our income, it can either be on the lower end of that scale or on the higher end, but I really like all of those different things, right? So, but finding a good therapist can be difficult, but it's important that we do that if we feel like we need that. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for saying that, right? So therapy is one way. Positive coping strategies are another way. These are things that we can do just wherever we are, whenever we are, to help us just cope with different things that we're going through. We can cope ahead, so things that we can do if we know, all right, I have a stressful situation coming up. I need to make sure that I'm okay and prepared for it. This is something that I do before winter, because I know winter is usually the worst time of the year for me. And so I need to make sure I have my coping strategies in place for, when I wake up and it is just snow all over the ground and I can't go outside and play the sports that I usually like to play, which is, football, baseball, and things like that. So there's some good coping strategies on here. Getting enough sleep, that's one of those things that's just like a basic necessity is sleep, hygiene, food, those basic necessities, though they are considered coping strategies, they are at the end of the day basic necessities that sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget, oh, I actually do need to eat before I go to work or before I do these different things. Otherwise, it's just not going to be okay for me. So making sure we have those things. So does anyone want to share any of your coping strategies? Because I have some up here, but this is for you all. I would love to just know more about you guys and, what are some coping strategies that you all have? Music. Thank you so much, Byron. Playing or just listening? Both. walking, jogging, and listening. Gotcha. Getting fresh air, going on a walk, absolutely. Right? Super important. Going to a park. Yes. Parks are underrated. Parks are very underrated. You know, writing in a daily journal, absolutely. Exercising. Journaling is very great, right? Yeah, prayer is good too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Spending time with safe people for sure, right? Right. So those are all really good things, right? And so making sure that we know what those coping strategies are and we can put those things in place. We don't want to lose sight of those. We want to make them a priority as well. I am someone that can speak from experience when I don't make my coping strategies a priority in my life, whether, oh, something came up, so I was gonna go for a walk, but now I can't because something comes up. Um, I definitely notice that it's just not it's not good. It's not helpful. And so we live in a very fast-paced world, very fast-paced society. So it's super important that we take that time. Um, Amanda, thank you so much for saying that, taking time away from the kids, to do some self-care. Absolutely. Right. Thank you so much for saying that. Sometimes I say that out loud and then I feel guilty saying it, but it's true. I got to take some time. I love my babies, but mm, but yes, it's all good stuff, right? So, with that being said, that is the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any like questions for me? Anything that you want me to clarify? Is there a slide that you want me to go back to? Just let me know and I can definitely do that. Um, I'm going to put the evaluation in the chat again so that it's at the top of everyone's thing. So definitely please help us out by filling out that survey. That is going to be very helpful for us. But yeah, any questions at all that anyone has, I'm definitely willing to answer those. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add what everyone else is sharing. This was really helpful and really great information. So we really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And I will be, just so everyone that's on here is aware, I will be sharing this recording as well as the link to the survey. And I can also include this information for NAMI, the helpline, in that email. And Stone, is it okay if I share your email or would you just prefer me to share this information?
No, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So on Friday, when I share my, the follow-up email, I'll include all of that in there. And that's also when I will share the gift cards for you guys, for being a part of it. Cause we want to thank you for also the participation we've had in this, presentation. That's what drives these presentations. And so thank you for everyone's engagement and participation.
Yeah, it was really great. I appreciate you all.
Awesome. Is there anything else? Any questions before we end the session? All right, I don't think we have any questions or anything. So thank you guys all for being here and we look forward to seeing you around the summer.
Thank you all. You all
Stone.
have a good one. Thank
You
you.
too.